So over the past few days, I have been doing something which I have been meaning to do or hoping to do for years now, which is go through my notes and not necessarily eliminate, but kind of process them, sort them, merge them, turn a lot of fragments into more meaningful combinations of things so that it's less chaotic. If it was physical paper notes, it would be like, imagine having a really messy desk with lots and lots of papers strewn about, and it's just one big pile, and some of the stuff at the bottom is not even accessible. And then just going through it, processing it, putting it into neat and tidy piles and folders, and stuff that's no longer relevant you get rid of, stuff that's important you prioritize, and just reorganizing all of that shit. And it feels really, really good. Particularly, most of the notes that have been troubling me are in my iPhone notes / MacBook notes. They're the same notes folders that sync across. And at its peak, I think last year I had about 1,100 notes, and I brought it down to about 800, 700, 600, 500. Now I am just under 400. I think I'm at 393 now notes, and I'm hoping to bring it down to, I want to see if I can go below 300 and maybe below 200, maybe below 100, I don't know yet. A bunch of these, get repurposed into like Google Docs, where 100 plus notes rearranged nicely into something that I think will eventually become essays or blog posts. So let me, I want to think about the history of this for a while. So when did I start taking notes? I remember having a notebook in the army when I was in the military, like journaling stuff. I had a blog before that. I've always been writing. It's kind of all over the place, but it was never really a formal thing. I always just had, where did I keep notes before like my iPhone? Before I had my iPhone, I had Android, and I used to use Evernote. I remember that was in like 2013. Before that, I must have kept stuff on my computer. I think I don't really recall using any particular app on my computer. I might have like folders with text files or something, bookmarks, I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess by the time I started working, that was when I needed notes for work as well, and that's when I used Evernote. And I also accumulated my personal notes. But I'm trying to remember if I had like a note-taking system when I was writing blog posts in the army. I remember I was doing all these things about like writing about the 7 deadly sins, and those involved googling a bunch of stuff. But I don't know if I kept notes. I think I just did it on the fly. And I remember, I think in 2014 or 15, I looked up like note management systems and stuff, and that was how I discovered Tiago Forte, who is now, I would say, is a friend of mine. And he wrote the book Build a Second Brain, and there's that whole personal knowledge management community around that space. I've tried not to say too much, write too much, think too much about like note-taking systems, because I think if you're not careful, it's very tempting and easy to become someone who spends all their time thinking and talking about notes instead of dealing with what those notes are supposed to help you serve. But at the same time, I feel it's like talking about my son, right? Like I mentioned in the video a while ago that I don't necessarily want my son to be a focal point in my content, and yet at the same, I'm not gonna say his name, or I might someday, I don't know, but I'm not gonna be a daddy blogger. But I am a dad, and I am a blogger, quote unquote, and like, it would be dishonest, or it would just be strange if I pretended like that wasn't a part of my life. Because one of my priorities is being honest. That's probably my deepest priority, is to be as honest as possible. And there's complexity in that, like what do you reveal, what do you not? And there comes a point where like, if you haven't mentioned something for a long period of time, like, are you hiding it? And now I'm reminded that some people have talked about that with regards to like coming out, like sexually, like if you're gay. And like, do you have to announce that you're gay? Do you have to have a coming out? Like, maybe you don't want to make that a big part of your identity. But at what point does not coming out become, oh, you're hiding it? You know, it's tricky stuff. I don't think there's this hard and fast rule. I think it really depends on your context and your circumstances and so on. Anyway, yeah, I'm an essayist, blogger, author, right? I've written a couple of books, and writing introspect especially was a big research project, and I had to maintain a lot of notes. And even beyond that, and even before that, I just, I've always collected, when I say always, I guess it's like 10 years-ish, collected a lot of bookmarks and notes and links to things to analyze and read. And my Twitter is an elaborate labyrinthine public note-taking system, which I'm happy with, but also slightly overwhelmed by and slightly annoyed with, because it's not super quick and easy to navigate. But yeah, so my goal moving forward is to write a bunch of good essays. I've said this repeatedly for a couple of years now. And for me, so like my note-taking systems are my thinking. I'm reminded of, I think Richard Feynman said something like, when somebody was asking him about his, I don't know if it's his notes or his working, and someone said something like, oh, that's a simulation of your working, a representation of your working. And he's like, no, this is me doing science, or this is me doing what I do, which is the scratches on paper. And yeah, same, to some degree, like my notes and I are the same thing. Like I've joked a few times, but quite meaningfully, that like I feel like I identify as a hypertext library. It's me. It's the way, like like an architect might say, point at a building and be like, that's me, or or like a painter or whatever. Like your works are you, and that includes the notes you make to make sense of things. It's all part of the same thing. What else do I want to say about? So I've been meaning to do this stuff for a long time, but I've been it never really happened. It's a bus. Noisy ass truck. I've been meaning, so I left my job in 2018, and I feel like I froze a bunch of my notes then to get to later, and it took me a very long time to get around to getting to them. And I wonder if I had to go through multiple phases or transitions in life before I felt ready to go through those things. And yeah, a thing that I wanted to mention was that I feel emotional relief and physiological, I can breathe better now from clearing out my notes. Because I guess at some level, as long as you have stuff that you've been meaning to do that you haven't done, it manifests as tension in the body at some level, for me at least. And yeah, I'm wondering if I could have done this stuff sooner, and I suspect maybe not. I suspect there was a timing thing about it, and I needed to be at this point in my life before I really felt ready to get to it and say goodbye to some things, and break some things. And I have a draft of an essay on my Substack called Forgotten Media, or Grieving Lost Media or something, where I had a couple of blogs that I had one blog that was deleted by forces beyond my control, like the server of the service provider got destroyed. I deleted some of my own stuff and regretted it. I lost a notebook from the army that I'm very sad about to this day. And all of those things, I think, kind of traumatized me into preserving as much as possible. And I think it's a big part of who I am. It's like people ask me why do you tweet so much and what's your elaborate? Part of it is an act of remembrance. And there are other things going on that might be why am I trying to remember so much? And why am I trying to be a chronicler of the passage of time? I feel like people are not responsible about that, at a societal level. You can't even trust your institutions, you can't trust the media, you can't trust I don't know, academic institutions or whatever. history gets forgotten so quickly, like in a matter of years. Like I have notes of like when the newspaper will report some news, and then a few years later it will report something else and say that something that happened the same is the first time something's happened, when they had previously reported when the previous time it happened. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this ongoing amnesia. Like, yeah, it's crazy to me. Like, so much of mainstream civic life has this ongoing amnesia. And there's this quote from Tony Benn from a long time ago. He said that if you take care of your like personal waste paper basket for 50 years, that becomes a public library. And I really see that. I really have come to understand it, that like there's no substitute for like personal oral histories, and they're really important, and people don't see the importance of it until like much later. So you look kind of silly for a while when you're doing it, like, why are you bothering with this, until you realize that nobody else was keeping record. And at the same time, like, how do you know you're not being some kind of hoarder with like some kind of disorder? It's hard to say. You have to face yourself and ask yourself what things are really for and what the goal is, and so on. And I'm getting a little bit tired, so it's about 12 minutes, so I'm gonna stop now, I guess. But I have more to say about notes, and I guess this itself, and these videos themselves are like notes, right? And this will probably be woven into, I have 2 different essays that I'm working on. One is about the forgotten media thing, and one is about going through my notes right now. And maybe I'll merge them both into something more epic. That'll be cool. I'm always hoping for my posts to have something more than the sum of its parts, and more interesting parts to some. I'm just rambling. Hope you all are well. Let me know how things are going. Done.